Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Welcome. Hello. Hello, hello. I'm sorry. I hesitate to interrupt all the great conversations going on. It was nothing like feedback to completely stop a conversation. I'm sorry about that. We are really very happy to see you all. Welcome to the kickoff of the Board Fellows program this year. My name is Ben Mangan. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Social Sector Leadership here, and I'm also on the faculty here at Berkeley Haas, and it is such a pleasure to see you all in the room. I'm going to say a few words about our center. I'm going to say a little bit about what this program really means at a higher level. And then I'm going to turn it over to our program director, Kathy Garza, who is going to walk us through some of the nuts and bolts for our kickoff and our event this evening. So first, let me actually just get a pulse for who's in the room. If you are a board fellow, would you raise your hand? All right, most of the room. If you are a staff member at a nonprofit organization, would you raise your hand? A couple of you. Okay, and how about board members? Excellent. So this is the room of problem solvers. This is the room of people who dedicate themselves to trying to solve the problems that are the hardest, in my opinion, to solve in society. They go unsolved in the marketplace. They are solved either poorly or not at all by government, and they are left to all of you to solve in an environment that is always scarce of the resources required to solve these really challenging, complex problems. And I always like to surface that because I think this is a sector that suffers for its name, nonprofit, which is a terrible name. It's just a legal designation. But it is for a lot of different things. It's a sector that, one, is a significant part of our economy. It represents 5% of American GDP, 10% of American wages. But I would argue much more importantly that it also represents our most aspirational values as a society. If you think about nonprofit board governance and the way it reflects these values, consider the fact that your boards are mostly elected from community members who volunteer, coming from the communities that they're intended to benefit. That is a beautiful thing. And that represents such a large part of our economy and such a big part of what we aspire to as a society. It also happens to represent some of the, or actually the 4 defining principles of our school. And I want to encourage all of you board fellows, you Haas students, and if you're not a Haas student, you'll hear about our defining principles, to practice these as you do your work together. So, of course, I don't need to remind you of this, but as board fellows, you will have confidence without attitude, and you will work with your board members and staff members from your organization, and you should be questioning the status quo to think about how you might do things differently to achieve your mission, and you will learn along the way. So you will reflect the defining principle of students always. And of course, by definition of your participation in all of this, you are going beyond yourself. And so those are our 4 defining principles. You'll see them in action throughout the work that you all do together, and they very much also reflect what our vision is as a center, which is that millions of people's lives in this community, around the country and around the world, are measurably better because of the experiences and the insights that we provide to the leaders that we touch through our programs and our classes. And so we offer many classes to students across the Berkeley campus, but we also run programs like this because we very much see ourselves as an important part of positive social change in our community because of what Berkeley really is. So I want to welcome you again, and I want to ask my colleague, Kathy Garza, to come to the stage, and she's going to talk a bit about scoping your work and getting into the nuts and bolts of the work of tonight. Thank you. Oops.
Thank you, Ben. Welcome, everybody. This is by far my favorite event at the school. I love the kickoff and seeing everybody getting together and doing good work, and before the students really get dragged down into the depths of academics and job search and that sort of stuff. And that will come up, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the table. When Ben and I were talking about what kind of programming we wanted to do tonight, we wanted to make sure that we could draw on our long our long experience with board fellows. I think this is our 14th year doing this program. And so we've learned a lot, and we want to set you up for success. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I've seen work well for success for you guys, and I encourage you to implement these. The first is I encourage you to front load your time. And what I mean by that is really take these next 2 months to get to know each other, understand the work of the organization, understand the skill set of your fellows, and just take that time to set it up, because once it's set up, it's just a matter of implementation. And where I've seen it come off the rails is when there's a lack of communication. We're all very busy, and a question might be asked, an email gets sent with a question, you read it, you're going to respond to it tomorrow or as soon as this hard thing that you're working on right now passes, but you forget. And of course, the other party is busy as well, and so they forget to follow up. And then before you know it, it's March and the project needs to be reported on. So I encourage you to really take the time to front load and communicate. I also find that when organizations expose our fellows to the work they do, to actually get them in front of their beneficiaries, that really seems to work well. And it really gets the students engaged and they see where the rubber hits the road, and so they want to contribute even more. So I encourage you to do that. And for those of you who have been away from an academic setting in a while, you may have forgotten that the semester system allows for very long winter break, and our students are going to disappear, pretty much from the second week of December until after the Martin Luther King holiday. And so I encourage you to schedule a mid-year check-in. Once they get back from the holiday, of course I'm calling it a mid-year, it's an academic mid-year. I understand it will be in January or February. That's not exactly mid-year, but it's our mid-year. So I encourage you to maybe tonight schedule that so that you re-engage and take stock of where you are, and so that you can continue on and meet your deadlines. Last year, there was a student group who, when doing their project scoping, took the time to lay out their project for the academic year. Now, you don't have to worry about their tasks, but they parsed out by phase, and I will send the PowerPoint to you too, but they parsed out their chunk of work, they calendared it, they went into the detail of what each chunk was going to contain, and they also talked about when they'd be giving these interim reports to the board down below, board updates. And so it's just an example that I found very useful for them. And so just something to consider. You don't have to do anything this detailed, but this goes with my advice of putting in some work up front, and it seems to help get the project all the way through. And speaking of projects, I frequently get asked, what's within the realm of possibility here? And because you're going to be talking about that, you're going to be scoping out what the work you'll be doing together is. And I find that there's this feeling sometimes of, well, I have this project idea, and it shouldn't take you that long. It's pretty easy. We see it very commonly with surveys. But here's an example of one we got last year. The fellows will complete a dashboard of key metrics. Okay, dashboard's pretty easy. 5 dials, not a big deal. This visualization will give busier board members and board members without extensive financial backgrounds an easy snapshot of the most important metrics. Important metrics. Whose important metrics? But given significant changes in the last few years, a reliable and simple dashboard will help the organization more easily understand its fundamentals in order to meet its strategic objectives. Okay, so it's going to tie into a strategic plan. So when I read this, because the fellows will give me the first draft of their scope, I asked the fellows, well, whose point of view is this? You know, you said you wanted a dashboard for the board of directors, so that to me means it's for the board of directors. You're going to have to interview the board of directors and each one, and that's going to take some time. You got to set it up. Are you going to do it in person, by email? How is this going to work? And then you're going to get some information from the board, some of the directors of metrics that aren't currently captured. So is it feasible to capture the information they're looking for? Is it data you already gather, or do you have to set something in place to gather that data, and what's that going to take? So then you draft the dashboard, and you have to circulate it, and then you have to wait for feedback, and then there's going to be a redraft and iterate. And so something that seemed to be so easy and shouldn't take so long actually is totally appropriate for this project, because we are a 7-month program, and it takes about 7 months when the fellows are putting in, on average, 8 hours a month. This fits our qualification, but don't think of it as something that should just be done next month. There's another classification of projects that we see a lot, and it's around fee-based businesses. We're all doing them. You know, either you've got one, you want one, you have too many, and you want to do some pruning, so you want the fellows to help you out with that. So I saw a project scope last year that someone who wanted one, and they wanted the fellows to develop a business strategy or business plan complete with market analysis for providing fee-for-service business. Okay, so they want this fee-for-service business. They want to determine the extent to which they can offer it. Do they have the capacity to do so? What is the break-even? What's the market demand? What's the fit with their purpose? So this is quite large and too aggressive, I think, for this type of project, this type of program. The thing I asked the fellows and the nonprofit partner to consider are, you have to think about what is the skill set of your fellows. We have mostly first-year graduate students, and many of the students are coming to pivot into a different career. So we do have a number of consultants and a number of heavy-duty finance and analysts, and people with some real applicable skills, but you need to clarify that with your fellows. But again, what I told the fellows was, maybe there's some external work. Let's parse this up. You can't really do the big business plan. The big business plan is more suitable for another class that we offer, actually, the social sector solutions, where we do exactly this sort of thing over the course of a semester. We do it in the spring. Teams of students work on this all semester long. But what the fellows can do is maybe take a look at the market. What is out there already? How saturated is it? Or what are price points? Or, just take a look at the market, do some sort of market analysis. And the organization needs to take into account how are they going to be able to support the student. And this is true for projects writ large, actually, is we're going to have questions for you. We don't know your business as well as you do. And so be there. It's helpful to know who in the organization can answer questions and help the students and support the students. So for this particular project, I told the students it was a little too aggressive and that they could do a chunk of it, but not the whole thing. And then there is a common one that is nonprofit board governance. Everybody figures, hey, this is a program that's coming out of the Center for Social Sector Leadership. That's your wheelhouse. And so we saw a project that asked about, they were interested in coming up with a proposal for restructuring the board that involved committee structure, committee charters, board job descriptions, a board dashboard about nonprofit board that aligned with their strategic plan. And so that is totally doable, but again, very different angle. You'd have to check with the students. Many of the students have experience with nonprofits, but from a volunteer standpoint. Or they might not have any experience. They're here in this program because they want that experience. So to ask them to actually do that on the spur of the moment is not something that I think is reasonable to expect of them, but they have us. They have the faculty, our center faculty and our staff all have that experience. We actually have one of our faculty members in the audience who's Lynn Heinrich. And so come to us, students. We're happy to do this kind of project. We can, it is in our wheelhouse, but it's heavily tied to staff and faculty, so reach out to us and we'd be happy to help. So that is my advice to you and kind of buckets of projects that you might think about tonight. I know many of you came with some ideas already in mind. Some of you have already kicked it off. What we're going to do next is table work. You're going to, I think we had enough time to talk prior to this presentation. We've got you seated together. You've probably already introduced yourself, but take some time to introduce yourselves. At your table, we have the scope templates that will drive your conversation. You'll be noting the problem that you want solved, what resources are going to be needed to solve these problems in terms of, are there reports, are there annual reports or internal point people that will need to be playing a part? What are the deliverables? What do you really want to see? Is it a PowerPoint? Do you want the fellows to lead a portion of your strategic offsite? What is the deliverable? And what are the working norms? How frequently are you going to meet? Where? Remotely? In person? That sort of thing. And then students, please do share with your mentors and your organizations your schedule, because you do have a little bit of a unique schedule and with long breaks and spring break, and just make sure that you're aware of those constraints so that you can work around that. So you all are at tables together. Some tables are more crowded than the others. We have some free tables if you want to spread out, because conversation's going to get kind of loud. So feel free to move if you want to. And are there any questions? No? You want to get down? There's plenty of food, by the way, so feel free to get up and take a little break and go get some more food or some more drink, and I'll let you get to your work. Thank you. Thank you for participating.